Why have there been dozens of acts of genocide since World War II? Does anybody care? Why is the sky blue? Bernard Storch was born in Poland on November 10th, 1922. He had four brothers, one of whom died of tuberculosis at the age of 11. Though anti-Semitism was a factor in pre-war Poland, Storch says he was sheltered from it and had a mostly happy childhood, even though he lived mere miles from the German border. He was the son of a World War I veteran, a lieutenant, who served from 1912 to 1918. He came to the United States on April 27, 1947, but before that, he was a prisoner in a labor camp, a soldier for the Polish army who fought in the infantry and for the artillery, and a hero who helped free labor and concentration camps. Welcome to a special edition of The Prism. Bernard, first of all, thank you for speaking with us and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As a matter of fact, it's not for us really. It's for the future generations. And I'm not a storyteller. I never say anything which I didn't see. I just tell the truth the way I saw it. I thank God I have good memory and I can memorize that. I don't remember what I had for dinner yesterday, but I remember the stories, which not stories, the facts which I did see.
What was it like growing up in Poland? Did you have a lot of friends? Was there a lot of open pastures where you played? Did you have to work very early? What was the atmosphere?
Oh, that's wonderful. I was waiting for that question. Yeah, in Poland, I grew up actually. The community where I grew up, we had 20,000 people in our city. Just general people. Out of that were 2,500 Jewish people. The rest were Christians. We had all different type of people. As a matter of fact, we have evangelists because that was under the Austrian occupation. Okay, and we had also some Russian people which didn't want to stay under the communists. They came there and they were there. And the majority, of course, was a Christian community, Polish Christian community. And I must say that we had no animosity in between us. There are a lot of animosity in Poland, but I guess because the community was so close, I had the same teacher which my mother had. And, so the background was way back. God forbid if somebody, and that was the truth, if somebody would call you Jew or something like that, you tell the teacher about it, the teacher would bring him, his because that was a boys' school, his parents to the school and give him a lecture, and from that day on, you never will call you a Jew again. God forbid somebody hit you or something, it was the same situation. And you get a penalty. He could not show to school till it gets improved. So that was, it was not common. Okay, all depends in Poland where you live. If you came to a larger city, the anti-Semitism was much, much larger. Why? Because the jealousy was there. The people were not very rich people there. My grandparents, they make the living, nice and clean. Their kids were dressed beautifully, nice and clean. But the thing is that there was no alcohol in the house there, and because the most money which the people spent was on something like that, really. And instead of giving the kids, the nice clean garment or something like that, or more food, they rather put in a bottle of whiskey on the table, and that cost awful lot of money. And I think that was the downfall, and that's where the jealousy fell in. The Jews did not have as much as, they didn't even have half of it, which the Christian had. And unfortunately, that jealousy came. The Christian were made more money, and they were not in the same position where the Jews were, because the living condition were completely different, the atmosphere and the condition. The condition starts at home were completely different. But thank God, I did not have any problem. I played ball together with the Christians, and it was a boys' school. It was, balls with the things, and you didn't have cars or buses or trolleys bring you to school. I live 3 kilometers away from my school, and each day you have to walk to school. If somebody passed by with a wagon or whatever it is, they pick you up and not to worry about anything. They brought you wherever you went, and that was fine. And if not, it was the same thing during the winter. But if there was not, then simply walking, walking back and forth, and it was not so bad. You didn't have so many cars the way we have here, so it was safe. Parents were not afraid of sending kids to school on a walk, because there was absolutely no problem with it at all. Now, as far as the living, my father was in business himself. At that time, he started with horses. He had 6 pair of horses, and people were manning them. The horses were strictly for transportation, bringing goods, transporting goods from one place to the other. And we had a salt mine. That was the second salt mine in Europe. The largest in Poland, that was the second largest, goes way back. And as a matter of fact, that salt mine is still operational now, which goes about 15 kilometers underground, where they still digging salt out and everything else. So, the merchandise from that salt had to be brought in to the railroad station, and that's what mostly the transport was used for that. Later on, he liquidated the horses and bought 2 trucks, and that was the modern time. That was already in the late 30s. And that was his business, also transporting. He himself didn't know how to drive a car or something like that, but yet he had business. People which drove those trucks, and that was his business. Unfortunately, as I said, he was a World War One veteran, hero. Really, I call him a hero. He was wounded, and this, he was there. He was really a hero to me. He was a lieutenant, which is very seldom, something like that happened in Europe. In Poland during my time, you got a rank of a lieutenant, and you got a rank like a captain. You got a rank as a major, but no commission. You could not be a commander of anything, not even a platoon. So the position you got immediately when you finish your college, high education, you automatically enter the military, on a basic trainings and everything else. You did everything what you're supposed to, but on a higher rank. But the fact is that you never could lead a platoon or anything else. You just was an honorary degree. Military was compulsory. Once you reach the age of 21 in Poland, you pass your exam, your doctor exam and everything else, you had to serve. All your qualification, all depends what you were able to do. Infantry, artillery, communications, something like that. And but tanks, unfortunately, we didn't have it. But the Jewish guys did not get any access to tank, because that was higher anarchy. Same thing with Air Force. You couldn't do that. So something like that. And as far as myself, as a student, I have no animosities between each other, because we knew each other. We knew each other, and God forbid, and if my mother would tell that lady what her son did to me, that lady would take that kid over the knee, not like here, would give him a couple smacks, and that kid would not do what again he was doing. But that was only in the small areas. In the big cities like Lodz or something else was widespread, because there are too many to everything. And it was not as controlled as that small city. You know what I mean? It's the same thing in New York. In New York City, the same thing. When I live in Rockland County, it's a small community. It's a different situation, and that was the same thing there. So I did not feel any hardship in that. Was there anti-Semitism? Of course it was anti-Semitism. There's no question about it. Was there hatred against each other? Of course. But in my case, I don't know, I was blessed with that, and I did not have any problem. And in the military, God forbid, in the military was no hatred at all. There was no different. In my military, during the war, your ability count, and how high you wanted to risk your life, you could have had it. Okay, there was no difference between a Jew and a Christian during the war.
So it sounds like you were, as you said, fairly blessed. You had a fairly happy childhood, with the exception, of course, of when your brother contracted tuberculosis and passed, and you were sheltered. So when it changed, when the hatred fell, when things began to get rough, was it gradual or was it a knife blade falling? Was it really quick?
The hatred change in Poland as a whole. We have, I don't, as far as the history goes, perhaps you heard about it, perhaps not. Marshal Piłsudski was the first Polish leader which took over and chased the Russians out of Poland, from Warsaw out of Poland to Kiev. And Poland became a country by itself because for quite a few years it was under the occupations. Marshal Piłsudski was a democratic leader, a very pure democrat leader, and he was protecting minorities, the majority of them the Jews, because Jewish minority was a lot in Poland. The largest minority was Jewish minority in Poland, and the Jews were under his protected, and that would continue like that from when Marshal Piłsudski was alive. You have no problem with getting high any place. Later, when he died in 1936, unfortunately, he died from cancer, and Rich Schmid, which supposedly he was under his command and everything else, but nothing rubbed off from him. When Rich Schmid took over in 1936, the anti-Semitism went sky high, sky high. Not only that, as a matter of fact, even the school, when you went to college and school, high school, college, right? The Jewish kids were sitting already on the other end. They did not get the same right on the Rich Smigwy. There was a president of Poland, Mościcki was his name. He was a Democrat. But as soon as the Rich Smigwy took over, complete, like day and night, the thing fell apart. He went along with Rich Smigwy, and the anti-Semitism grew sky high, and that's where the trouble started between the Jewish people and the Polish people after the death of Marshal Piłsudski, and that was a complete change, just a day and night, and it continued like that. It continued like that even during the war. The same thing, because stayed under the same thing. We had a problem if the Jews. If the Polish underground, which was the Armia Krajowa, they called it, if they would have been a cooperation between the Warsaw Ghetto, which was the largest in Poland, Warsaw Ghetto, and the Armia Krajowa, the AK, okay, they wouldn't be a disaster the way it was there. But unfortunately, there was no cooperation. Jews were excluded from the Armia Krajowa, and they had to be on their own. And unfortunately, that's where the really hatred started there. The outcome would have been completely different if the Armia Krajowa would have cooperated with the Jews in Poland, especially in Warsaw. In Krakow, there was a cooperation. But in Warsaw was a huge ghetto. Krakow did not have as many people as the other one, and there was a cooperation between the Jews and Krakow, the underground I'm talking about, the partisans. And there was a big uprisings always in Krakow, and they were in favor of us because their cooperation was better. But don't forget, we had also the Pope coming from that area. So that, it's a different situation, different thing. The whole problem started with the uprising in Poland was that we did not get any cooperation from the underground, the AK, which was the Armia Krajowa, to the Jews, and they had to be on their own, and nothing happened, and that was the biggest downfall of them all. Was that part of life, and people only remember that, but the hatred between the Armia Krajowa and the Jews were tremendous. There were some Jews were able to do, but thank God they didn't remove the pants. So with men how it is, but otherwise than that was zero. Was no cooperation, and a lot of people died unfortunately unjustly. And of course you You always see the bad things, so everybody is bad. But you have to exclude, the bad things from the good things. You have to put it on the scale. Which side was better than the other? So it's it's very hard to put it on the scale what it is, but you have to use your own judgment. And my judgment is what I arrived from day one is that hate is evil and it shouldn't exist and it should be eliminated completely, if possible, if possible. But hate should not exist between humanity. But we saw what was going on, and unfortunately, it still continues today.
One thing you said probably would surprise many people, which is that the idea that there was significant hatred and anti-Semitism as early as 1936, before the Nazis came. And I think the reason it would surprise people was because one of the narratives, one of the things you often hear is that the reason that the Jewish people didn't fight back initially, didn't run away initially from the Germans, was because no one expected the Germans to do what they did. However, if they were already in a place where there was a lot of hate, where there was a lot of anger, where there were things happening in business already, segregations and things to Jews, should they have been so surprised?
Well, I was not surprised. To tell you the truth, I was not surprised because my uncle, which I had, he had a tremendous, beautiful business, men's custom-made clothes, way down in Upper Silesia, just 3.5 miles from the German border, and so I went to apprentice with him in 1938, beginning of 1938. Now, that was a restricted area there because it was a border town. As a matter of fact, on the other side of the border was Germany, and 3.5 kilometers. That's where I met my wife after the war. She was born in that city there. So I saw the anti-Semitism already there because, first of all, anybody which came from the other side, like from Krakow, you right away had to have a photo ID and everything else, and who you were, and the religion was printed right on it. Religion was printed on it. When you went to the military, the same thing. You had to go. They didn't say Jewish, they said Mosaic, Moses, So I had already there. And I saw the anti-Semitism that was going on in 1938 there. Why? Because there were Polish Jews which lived, and the children were born in Germany. But by the German law, if your great grandfather is not born in Germany, you're not a German, no matter how many years you lived there. As a matter of fact, my wife's parents were from Tomasz Mazowiecki, which is right close by from Lodz, right a few kilometers away. And they moved out. In 1915. They moved to Germany, to Upper Silesia there. But when time came in 1938, the Jewish children in Germany they were excused from schools physically. They were not allowed. Silesia was the last one, really, which still continued. Before that, they already in 1933, 1934, Jewish kids were already discriminated in classes in Germany. It happened to my wife because she was a child there, and unfortunately, and she was one of the best students in that school. Not only that, she was an excellent swimmer. She was taken as an Olympic swimmer. And unfortunately, it came in 1938, beginning 1937. She went to the school, and unfortunately, she was sent home. And the teacher himself, because she was a very excellent student, my wife, and the teacher himself, a German, came home to his parents to apologize. He says, "But that's the Nazis. It's not me. It's not the other teacher. That's the Nazis. And unfortunately, we cannot do it." So she couldn't go to school. She still continued in school because through the Jewish education she was going. So I saw the anti-Semitism very sharp down right away in 1938 in Upper Silesia. In my hometown, when I left it still was okay because, as I mentioned, it was a democratic city, and we grew up together. It was not a large community, and there was not a huge community of Jews there. Only out of 20,000, there were only 2,500 Jews. So it's it's like 10%, but it's a minority. The Hasidic, yes, we had a Belzer Rabbi, which is very orthodox and everything. And as a matter of fact, we had a Belzer Rabbi and another one which I forgot. But is that sect, and be still, it was not exposed the way it's exposed here. I don't like. I live in Rockland County, and I myself, as a Jewish boy, you read your lapsidekal, with its tzitzis, but for some reason in Poland we didn't wear them outside. We wear them inside. It was hidden inside. But I see here, and so I watch the kids doing that here and in the thing, and I'm amazed. I know which was a kosher, which was not, and some of them are not kosher because when you're missing an inch of it, it's already, you have to replace it. So there was not like that, and maybe that's why the country was not. I mean, the city was not as anti-Semitic as that. If there would be more leniency to the Jews, trust me, 3 million Jews would not have died in Poland. There was no way that they would have died in Poland. Jews were very good fighters because, first of all, everybody, Jews or not, you have to have training, military training, and everybody knew. Everybody knew the underground and everything else. But the roads were closed to them. And that was the tragedy of Polish Jews and Jews. Whoever was able to move out and go to join the partisans, they did. And as again, the same thing, they were underground, Polish underground. They didn't mix in, and that was the tragedy between the Polish people and the Jewish people, that they did not. During military, during regular institution, or the regular thing in peacetime, regardless you were Jew or German, you were Polish citizen, okay, you had to go to the army. Why couldn't a Jew be in the underground, the Polish underground? He had the same education like the other guy did. Wittgen. So that was the hatred. That was the hatred between this and the Jewish people in Poland at that particular time. But it's all dependent where you lived. I was blessed. Nobody wants to believe me, that I didn't suffer. Never got beaten up by anybody as a kid. My brothers, thank God, didn't do it either. But only because we were a small minority and was a peaceful life, higher education. The teacher was very strict. He said, God forbid somebody would raise their hand to a Polish guy, to a Jewish guy, or evangelist. They didn't like the evangelists either. So, so that was, because when we were part for religion, the evangelists have to live the same thing like the Jews. They're their own preacher. So there was a hatred between the minorities. But it was hidden, probably was, but not to that extent that it was done in the bigger thing. But that was the fault, really. It was the fault. I blame the underground, the organization. The military under-organization, which was in Poland, I blame them 100%. The outcome would have been completely different.
So you had some advantage in that you had a foreshadowing of what was going on in Germany and some of the emotions and some of the movement. And so when 1938 became 1939 and the Germans actually came into Poland, what did you do? What did you try to get your friends to do? What did you try to get your family to do?
Believe it or not, there was absolutely no talk of war at all. My uncle, which I was residing with, was on vacation. He was visiting actually my parents and his parents in the same city. And that was in 1939. 2 weeks, as a matter of fact, the war started in September 1st. 2 weeks prior to that, they went on vacation. Another uncle went on a honeymoon. Okay? So I got stranded right in that big city, 3 miles away from the German border, with a key to the house and everything. I was by myself because I was 17 years old almost, right? So I was the caretaker of the apartment. I was awakened at that time that was the 31st of August, and almost, because it was 4 o'clock, was already the 1st of September, with a big shells dropping close by, and that woke me up. I had no idea. I had no idea what was going on. I went to the window to look. It was still dark, but I didn't see anything in there. I opened up the radio. My uncle had a big Telefunken radio, which was a big, sort of like a cabinet, big Telefunken radio. I opened up that radio station, and there was a pause in the radio for, but took few seconds, but to me it was like an hour, because when you look for some news and all of a sudden doesn't show up, you pretend that it's who knows what happening. All of a sudden the game came in, and the guy came in, the announcer there, and said, our beloved country was attacked without provocation by Germans, but God prevails, we will win that war. And that was the end of the entire conversation. I did not go to sleep anymore. This train station was 9 kilometers away, but we had trolley cars going to that thing, not regular trolley cars going there. The station was in Katowice, which was that was the regional of that Silesia there. That was the headquarters of Silesia there. And I called in at that time. The telephone was still between that and that. He says, they don't know, but the last train is scheduled to leave by 10 o'clock in the morning. So I picked my little suitcase and closed the door, and that was the end of that apartment. And it's supposed to have taken me, the train was leaving by 1 o'clock in the afternoon or so, and it's supposed to take me like 3.5 hours to get home. That's all. That's how it was, 3.5 hours. It took me 3 days to get home. Never arrived with the same train which I started. With the same train that I started. The Nazi, as a matter of fact, I found out later, occupied the city. That was on a Friday. They occupied the city the same day. On Saturday morning, they set the beautiful synagogue, which was a German Jewish synagogue, because the majority of the Jews were German Jews, because that territory belonged to Germany originally, Upper Silesia, until 1920. 1920 there was Polish revolt, and they annexed it to Poland. And that beautiful synagogue, which I was going every day, saying Kaddish for my father, as a matter of fact, was down. I found out later, the following day. And my aim was to go home to my mom and to my brothers. And that's exactly what happened. So I went. It took me 3 days, and at that time, it's never arrived with the same train. I was extremely lucky because God watched me. I'm pretty sure, because I jumped on a train which was a military train, which was forbidden to go. Even during the war, it was forbidden. But I was hoping it's going the right direction. I knew my map. And as soon as I started out, I knew it's going east, not west, because could have gone somewhere to Warsaw or that area. But thank God it was going there, and thank God the train stopped in Bochnia, which was 33 kilometers away from Krakow. And I was jump out from the thing. Nobody saw me. I jumped out from the thing. I lost the suitcase. It was a little suitcase, which you go home, you don't need anything. So whatever it is I had, but I lost it because that was the third train. The reason for it was the Nazis was not so much bombing the train, was strafing. The planes were flying low, strafing. A lot of people got killed and everything else. But as I said, I was extremely lucky, and got home was the 3rd of September. It was a Sunday, middle of the night. It was 3-kilometer walk from the train station to my home. My parents thought that I was already dead because they knew that my thing was taken there a long time ago. But so I arrived there like a ghost, and everybody was asleep. And I came, and everybody was packing. And the reason for the packing is my uncle, which was on the honeymoon, the other uncle, which has that little baby at that time, 7 months old, he stayed behind. His wife was born in Katowice, As a matter of fact, she was even attending German school, because this German school got better education. So she didn't speak very poor Polish, believe it or not. And because of that, she says, we will stay because they have that little baby. They didn't want to go. And so when I came home, my my aunt, the one which came back from vacation. By the way, they lost also 2 suitcases, so they didn't have anything on them except which they had, because they were on a honeymoon, and they had everything in their suitcases, so they never got the suitcases. So she said, no, we have to move on. She was the one which her father, she was born in Germany, but her father was, born in Tomasz Mazowiecki. She says, no, we're not staying, because she was the one which was brought to the borders in 1938, and she saw what is going on. She said, we have to move, 14, she was able to persuade 14 people. One of them was a baby with a little boy, 4 years old. Daniel was a cousin of mine, 4 years old. Off of the people, it took us about 10 days. No, not 10 days, but because on the 10th of September, we wind up in Lvov. We didn't walk. We had one of the family which was transportation with horses, huge horses, like the Belgian thing, white backs, and a big wagon, not just a wagon like a farmer's wagon, huge one, because they were using for transport. 14 people were able. Not everybody was able to sit, but we changed. Some people were walking, and some people were changing. As a matter of fact, one of them was Dr. Landfish, who was professor of religion, and he also was the director of the bank. He came along with his wife and with his daughter. His son, unfortunately, stayed behind because he was not home. He was working in a different place, so he stayed behind because he didn't make it. We all came to Lvov, city Lvov, and as a matter of fact, the Dr. Landfish eventually, instead of going to, when he was taken to the Russia just the same way like us, he was able, because of his higher education and everything else, he was able to join and go to Andres, with the Andres military, but he settled down in Israel. It was the same situation with Begin. Begin was about 80 kilometers from my site in Siberia there, and he did exactly the same thing. Came to the Polish army and settled down. So it took us 10 days, and we arrived to Lvov. And everything was moving fine, no big deal. We couldn't get any labor because, we couldn't do anything. But we got support from the Jewish institutions then involved. They took us to their homes. Whoever had a house, give us a room to sleep, and that's what we did. And we did this thing here like that until April of 1940. Till April 1940. We were allowed to write postal card to my hometown. Why? Because Russia attacked Poland on the 17th of September, and they had a pact with Germany. So people from there were allowed to send postal cards to let them know where we are. So my mother knew where I was. Okay, so that was the thing that we got supported like that, and that ended in 1940. May 1940 it ended. Why? KBG came middle of the night and knocked on the doors. They knew exactly where we were because we had to register. And we registered because the Russian promised us that the registration is for all those people which want to go back to the other side. That was a trick. And we fell into that, but we registered. Nobody wanted to stay. We didn't have anything. And they had the names, and the main thing, the addresses. And in April of 1940, KBG came middle of the night and took whoever was on the list there. Was about 120,000 people, Jewish people there. And that's what saved us, that whoever didn't die in the labor camps, whoever didn't die, God spared them, and if those are people which survived. 1940, late 1941, there was an agreement made between United States, Britain, and the Polish government, General Sikorski, in London, that all Polish citizens should be released. Of course, the Russians got a lot of things from the United States. If they would not get a lot of stuff from the United States, when I say stuff, I'm not talking about bread or something like that. I'm talking about the trucks and all kind of other ammunition and all kind of other things which they need. Mostly trucks, but they needed, and food which they needed because Russia was attacked very early, and they lost the Ukraine. That was the bread basket for Russia, the Ukraine, because that's where they're producing a lot of stuff there. So what happened with us is like that. When there was agreement reached between the Polish government, not government, the exiled government, Gierek Sikorsky, and Churchill and Stalin, that all Polish citizens should be released. Now there were close to 2 million citizens, Polish citizens, 2 million Polish citizens, but most of them were Christians. The Jewish people mostly which wind up in Siberia were the one which came from the other side of the border, because the Russian government is not like like any other country. When you live here and you get annexed here, you immediately becomes the citizen. So everybody there which stayed in Lvov, those people which were born in Lvov and stayed there, they were automatically citizen of theirs. As a matter of fact, when you were 19 years old, the Russian immediately took you to their army. Even so, those guys didn't know how to speak Russian, but they were, and most of those people which were taken to the Russian army in the beginning, that was the end of them, because when the Nazis attacked, those people closer to the borders were the first one. So how did I do it? We of course did not want to stay in Russia, because we knew what felt, and we didn't have any communication with my parents. Even so, only one card which I received, and at that time my mother asked me, "Would you like me to send you something?" But that was in 1940, 41. That was still no problem. She was not in the ghetto yet. So I said, no, I have everything, because that nothing would have come true anyway. So I didn't want to, make a service there, so I didn't want to say anything. I have everything here. Boy, would I could use something, but I have everything here. I didn't want to scare her. So anyway, when that came, it was unfortunately winter time. You couldn't travel too much, but as soon as it came closer to January, we were released from that camp. We still have to say that, but we were citizens. We were treated completely different. We didn't have to go to the forest and chop the wood when a 40-degree cold or something like that. So we were free as free citizens. But as soon as I got a little bit warmer, the snow did not stop falling, then we started to move. I was with a family, so we tried to move south, out of that thing. The Russia war started, and they were doing very badly from the beginning. So everybody started to go away. The report a few months later came that the Polish army started to organize. I, of course, the other one didn't. My family did not apply, because they were married. One of them has a child, so they didn't apply. But I wanted to go. I was very patriotic, and I said, Polish army, I want to go and to see what I can do, to help my homeland. That was my aim, and I registered to go. But it didn't work out right away, because there was, again, right from the beginning, there was anti-Semitism by the group of people which were organizing. There were two divisions they organized, the 5th and the 6th Division. And they put right away a quota on the Jewish recruits. Even I had friends which were soldiers during World War, during 1939, and they were lucky to survive. They had ranks like a corporal and staff sergeants, and yet they were not admitted because they were married, and they put on the sideline because they were Jewish. They were anti-Semitism, believe it or not. There's in some instances, like my professor, big man, he got the thing. And the same thing, Menachem Begin, he got in because he had a high education and he knew he was. Those people were on the first line, and the families. They were able to get 2 divisions out of them from Poland. Unfortunately, there was a thing. When the thing stops, we didn't know what's going to happen. I was admitted, but put on the waiting line, and I was waiting. And meanwhile, the army moved because the Russians were attacked by the Nazis closer and closer. It was close to Moscow, as a matter of fact, and the headquarters for the army were near Kulbyshev, that area there, and so they had to move out because it was close to Stalingrad. So they have to move out. They went to Central Asia. So we followed to Central Asia, through Kazakhstan, and finally wind up near Yagivul, where the army was organized. And again, we went there, but it was too late for some reason because the two division left to Iran. So we were stranded again. A few weeks later, as a matter of fact, a note we received because you had to register as a Polish citizen. Wherever you came, you registered yourself as a Polish citizen, and I volunteered myself go to the Polish army, and I got the note that that was when I went back to Central Russia again, and that was my beginning of the military career, so to speak. But the other families didn't want to go. So, but eventually, Polish army, when we started to enter our front lines and everything else, there were casualties, so they needed replacement. So there were eventually everybody was, even my brother-in-law, which at that time had a child, he didn't go voluntarily, but he was called for duty, and eventually he went. Lucky he survived, and his family survived. Eventually they came back to Poland. So that was my volunteerism there.
Once you got into the Polish army, you obviously were somewhat successful based on the number of medals and recognitions that you've gotten that I see today. Were you told by Polish intelligence what was actually happening to the Jews? Did that drive you? Or were you in the dark just fighting for your country?
Actually, both. In the beginning, we were in the dark. We didn't know too much about it. But later, we were told just drip by drop, but never said that there is extermination going on. We never knew that. We never knew. Did the government know? I have absolutely no idea, but we had no idea. We knew that the Jews are singled out. So much we knew, because we knew already even before the war. Before the war started, Jews were already singled out in Germany itself. German Jews, were singled out. So we knew about it, and we knew that there was concentration camp in Germany before, when Dachau was built and Sachsenhausen was built and the Terris. So we knew that they are built for somebody there. And seeing that Hitler didn't, we know the history of Hitler, and we knew that Hitler is not friendly with the Jews, so they were not built for Germans. They had to be done something. Of course, we didn't know about crematoriums or something, but we knew about detention centers. So I knew there was not much different between Hitler detention center and the Russian, except the Russia lets you work to that, but they didn't kill you. You kill yourself with work and with malnutrition, with everything. But nobody put your gun to your head or would gas you. So that was the two different situations. We knew it's not good for the Jews. This we knew from day one, because even in 1939, in 1940, people was going while we were still in Lvov, people were coming from the other side of the border illegally to Lvov and to Bialystok, that area there, which was under the Russian occupation. They smuggled themselves in. Some of them were arrested by the KBG, because they came illegally there. So we found out what is going on there. They were also started to create ghettos. Even in my city, which was a small city, they started to make a ghetto already there, secluding the Jews from the Christians. So we knew it's bad. We knew something is going. How bad it's going to be, we had absolutely no idea. But my reason for volunteering to home was strictly to go. When you're young, you don't think anything. You're a hero. You will not get killed. Somebody else maybe, but not you. You'll be always okay. And that was my aim. My aim was strictly to go get reunited with my family, not realizing the tragedy which really was in front of our eyes. And there was not a lot cooperation from the outside, really. There would be cooperation with outside. Trust me, 3 million 5 million people would not be dead today, would not be. But unfortunately, that was our downfall. We did not have the cooperation from the outside. But my aim was strictly go and fight for, for liberty. I will never die, of course, and that was thing. And that was the only aim. But was there anti-Semitism in my army? No, there was not. For one reason. Because it was still under the Russian jurisdictions. There were a lot of hatred between the Jews itself, Russian Jews, and the Russian citizens there too. Because the Russian Jews were smarter and they always had a higher rank and they were able to do something. And again, the jealousy pops in. They never saw that this guy is smart and he can do something better than I do. They didn't see it that way. They just saw that we are 40 millions and they're only 3 millions. And the minority always, how can he overshadow me? And that was the biggest downfall there in Europe and the hatred which came up from it. But I considered myself, a Polish patriot, and I thought my only aim was I would never die. No, never would I die.
Before we get to the freeing of the camps, let's talk about your experience in theater in the fire.
I entered the military in March of 1943. As a matter of fact, we started to organize. Officially, the organization started the 1st Polish Division, the 1st Infantry Polish Division, and I was accepted to the 2nd Regiment, and I entered that in May of 1943. And in the territory near Kaluga, it's White Russia, and it's not far away from Smolensk. I entered the 2nd Regiment of the Polish Division, the 1st Polish Division, named after big Polish patriot, democratic patriot, Kościuszko, Tadeusz Kościuszko was his name. That the division was named, the 1st Polish Division, and I entered that, and they put me for some reason with a mortar company. It was not the United States. I think it's 81 mil. This one was 82 mil, just 1 millimeter different. We did not have even shoes, as a matter of fact. They'd give us it was May and it was June. It was very hot already there. And we just got clothes, like underwear and everything, second-hand underwear, because you could see that it was used. You could have seen that. We didn't have anything yet. We just got plain, green pants and green shirt and something like that, and a cap, not a regular Polish cap, just a Russian-style cap, because they didn't have the four-corner caps yet. Something like later they came in with a four-corner cap. Something like that. Shoes, unfortunately, they didn't have it, so we had to use our own shoes. I came with a poor boots, Russian boots. I earned those Russian boots, so I had them, and I had to wear them till July, because that's where we got the regular shoes from them. And I don't know, they saw something different than in me, so in June, I was recommended to the non-commissioned academy. Nothing fancy, in the field, right, together with everybody else. By the way, the Nazis were strafing that place. Most military exercise, which we in training, what we did was during the night, because it was in a forested area, and because the Nazis were strafing, it was 60 kilometers from the front. It was so close, and that was going on. So I was entering that non-commissioned academy, nothing fancy, field, same thing outside. We didn't have any buildings as such, only hoods, from cloth and everything else. And very windy, as a matter of fact. Rain came inside, all kind of stuff. And that continued until September 1st, 1943. We left the encampment closer to the front line. Our position is supposed to have been in the vicinity of Lenino. That's a little town, Lenino. And you're supposed to cross 3 little rivers there and everything else. And the first engagement is supposed to have been taken on the 10th of October 1943. Unfortunately, there's always in the army, they have a hill. And the enemy is on top and you're on the bottom of the hill. So they asked us to get the top to the hill. To that, and we succeeded to get to the top hill. In 2.5 days, we accomplished our mission. That was the first engagement, just to see what we can do. We accomplished that mission at a tremendous cost. We had over 3,000 casualties. There were 526 killed. Among them, the only rabbi which we had, Herschel Zavada, was him. He just finished the Lublina Yeshiva. I had 20 of my academy kids killed from there. Altogether, 46 casualties in there. We accomplished the mission of a tremendous cost, over 3,000 casualties.